.220 is our area of the code where we do electrical calculations, right? So we run the calculations out in accordance with 220. 220.12 specifically addresses the lighting requirements in the building. And so as we look at the table, you look at the occupancy, you calculate your lighting loads based on a VA per square foot. So right, that could be 2.5, 3.5, whatever the number is that's been established for what the right lighting load would be in that building. And so what we've continued to see is a little bit of pressure, right, from that calculation that the consulting engineers often have to do the calculation of not only the NEC for the electrical inspector, but also the energy code side of it, right, to demonstrate that you're complying with that not more than a certain VA per square foot. So you look at those and you say, why is there a differential here, right? And so a little bit of pressure to look at those numbers where the energy code has been adopted. And now what we're doing in this code change is actually for office spaces and for banks, there's an exception that's been put in. So those spaces were at 3.5 VA per square foot can now be calculated at 2.5 VA per square foot. So that gives you some latitude in your calculations and may drop, could drop you in a large space that's a bank or a large office space, could drop the calculation enough to move you into maybe a smaller service or something, right? So once again, as the consultants are looking at bidding and understanding, they need to know these changes to make sure they're competitive against the others that may be chasing these same jobs, right? So you got to use all the tools you have available to you. One of the other pieces of this that we need to talk about that's actually been in the code for a couple of cycles and hasn't I don't think has unfolded yet is that there's an exception that says if I put a monitoring system on here using a VA meter, then I can ultimately move clear down to the energy code level. So for instance, if I had a bank at 3.5 and that number in the energy code was 1, I could actually put a monitoring system on and an alarm system that would tell me, that keeps track of that load in case people start adding lights and things to it, that I could actually drop that load significantly further. So you start to see reasons and code requirements here where we're looking at connecting the building, right? I mean, you start about alarming, connecting, monitoring, and so you put these provisions in place and you have an opportunity to maybe even present your customer with utilizing things like EcoStructure and some of those capabilities that actually gives them an advantage with regard to how they size the service and how they size the structure on the calculations.
Yeah, I was going to echo that, Alan. If you just have a power monitoring system with alarms and you don't have it tied in, you need a process in place on what response will happen to the alarms. Who takes action? Who's responsible for that? How do you make sure that the infrastructure remains in a safe operating condition?
Sure.
Yeah.
I think we're going to see this used a lot in engineering designs because energy codes are becoming more prevalent across the country, and those energy codes themselves have requirements for metering, so it's a natural fit to take advantage of this exception.